The city of Luminaris Prime stretched far and wide, a glittering web of lights, towers, and skyways. Its streets were alive with a mix of humans and alien visitors, merchants hurrying with goods, children laughing on hoverboards, and citizens going about their daily lives. It was a city of peace, or at least, that was how it seemed from above. High above the city in the vast black of space, danger was already approaching. Captain Ryland Drake was no stranger to danger. His ship, the Starhawk, had carried him through countless missions across the galaxy, from rescue operations in asteroid belts to skirmishes with pirate fleets. But today was different. Today, his instincts told him something terrible was about to happen in the heart of the city itself. He scanned the readings on his dashboard. "Something's moving in the royal sector," he muttered to himself. The sensors blinked red, showing multiple small craft weaving dangerously close to the palace's protective shields. Zarathi. Ryland recognized the signature instantly. The Zarathi were a merciless alien faction, known for striking without warning, always after something valuable. Today, it seemed, their target was not treasure, but a little girl. Princess Ilara's daughter Lyra had been playing near the palace gardens when the Zarathi struck. One moment the courtyard was calm, filled with the soft laughter of children. The next, a dark shadow fell from the sky and screams echoed against the stone walls. Ryland's stomach tightened. He had faced enemies before, but seeing a child in danger, especially one so close to the heart of the human-alien alliance, ignited a fire inside him that no danger could cool. He pushed the Starhawk forward, weaving between the patrol drones and the incoming enemy craft. His fingers moved over the controls with precision, honed by years of training and countless missions. The city below blurred as he dove closer, focusing entirely on the target, a small figure being dragged toward a Zarathi shuttle. Lyra clutched a small silver pendant in her hand, her tiny body trembling. She didn't know who her rescuer would be, but instinct told her to hope, and hope arrived in the form of a streaking human pilot, his ship cutting through the alien formation like a blade. "Hold on," Ryland shouted, his voice echoing through the ship's communication system. He didn't wait for a response. Timing was everything. He fired the ship's disruptor beams, taking out the engines of two pursuing craft. Sparks and debris rained down around the shuttle carrying Lyra, forcing it to veer off course. Inside the shuttle, Zarathi mercenaries shouted in a guttural language, their claws and weapons trained on the child. Lyra's eyes widened in fear as she pressed herself against the wall. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew that a human was fighting to reach her. The shuttle shuddered violently as Ryland's ship rammed its side, just enough to destabilize it, but not enough to harm Lyra. The pilot's next move had to be perfect. He launched a grappling beam and latched it onto the shuttle. The Zarathi struggled, but Ryland's strength and the ship's precision overpowered them. In a swift motion, he pulled the shuttle closer, using the Starhawk as a shield. "Stay calm, little one." "I've got you," Ryland said, his voice calm but firm. There was no time for hesitation. The shuttle's hull began to crack, sparks flying as its power core wavered. Lyra's hands shook, but Ryland reached inside, carefully lifting her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, yet her presence carried a gravity he couldn't explain. Protecting her became the only mission that mattered. The Zarathi weren't finished. Another wave of enemy craft appeared, circling like predatory birds. Ryland's eyes narrowed. "All right, you want to fight? You got one." He activated the Starhawk's stealth thrusters, making the ship disappear from the enemy's sensors for a moment. Then, with a series of daring maneuvers, he zipped between the alien ships, dodging energy blasts that could have torn his ship apart. Lyra clung to him, frightened, but sensing his determination. "Are we gonna be okay?" she asked in a small, trembling voice. Ryland smiled briefly, though his focus never wavered. "We will be. You just have to trust me." The city's emergency response teams had mobilized as well, their drones and patrol units creating a protective shield over the palace grounds. Ryland guided the Starhawk through the defenses, ensuring Lyra's safety while simultaneously confusing and scattering the enemy. His tactics weren't conventional, but they worked. Humans had a way of thinking outside the predictable patterns that aliens often relied on. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, Ryland maneuvered the shuttle into the palace courtyard. Guards rushed forward, securing the area and rounding up the stunned Zarathi mercenaries. Lyra clung to Ryland as if letting go would mean falling into danger once more. The princess arrived moments later, her face pale but resolute. "Rylan Drake," she said, her voice a mix of relief and awe. "I can't thank you enough. You saved her." Rylan handed Lyra over, kneeling so he could meet her eyes. "She's safe now," he said softly. "That's what matters." Lyra hesitated, then hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her small arms barely wrapping around his torso. Even as the immediate threat passed, Rylan's mind was already calculating. This attack wasn't random. Someone had wanted Lyra specifically, and if the Zarathi had come once, they would come again. Protecting her today was only the first step. Later, in the quiet of the palace's observation deck, Rylan looked out over the city. Lights sparkled like stars below. Oblivious to the danger that had just passed, the princess approached, her expression serious now. "You have skill, Captain," she said, "and courage. But this isn't just a rescue mission. Our enemies are growing bolder. I fear this is only the beginning." Rylan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had always flown alone, trusting only himself and his ship. But something had changed. Protecting Lyra had stirred a sense of duty he hadn't realized he carried. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and daring, but protecting the next generation, ensuring they had a chance to live, was a mission that went beyond personal glory. He didn't know yet what the future would hold, but one thing was certain. He would stand between danger and Lyra for as long as it took. The Zarathi had underestimated him, underestimated humans, and that mistake could cost them everything. As night fell over Luminaris Prime, the city continued to pulse with life, unaware of the shadow that had tried to fall upon it. Rylan Drake, a human among humans, had proven one thing. Courage, cleverness, and heart could overcome even the deadliest threats. And as he watched Lyra safely return to her mother's arms, he felt something rare, a quiet, unshakable sense of purpose. This was only the beginning of his story. And in the depths of space, somewhere beyond the city's bright lights, Rylan knew the Zarathi would be planning their next move. But this time, they would have to face a human who would never back down. For the first time in a long while, Rylan didn't feel like a lone pilot fighting against the universe. He felt like a protector, someone who could make a difference. And that was a feeling more powerful than any weapon, any starship, or any alien threat. The city slept safely that night, and somewhere in the quiet, Lyra whispered almost to herself, "I want him to stay." Rylan didn't hear it, but he felt it, the start of a connection that would change both their lives, and perhaps the fate of Luminaris Prime itself. The morning after the attack, Luminaris Prime seemed brighter, almost defiantly so. The sun reflected off the tall towers, casting long shadows over the bustling streets. Citizens walked past unaware that danger had visited their city just the night before. For most, it was just another day. For Captain Rylan Drake, it was anything but. Rylan stood on the observation deck of the royal palace, leaning against the glass and staring out over the city he had saved. His mind replayed the rescue mission again and again, the way Lyra had clutched his arm, the way the Zarathi ships had twisted and spiraled in their attempts to capture her. He had survived countless missions across the galaxy, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about victory or survival. It was about protecting someone else, a child innocent and fragile. A soft chime echoed in the room, interrupting his thoughts. The palace's security system had recognized him and summoned him to the Queen's private chamber. Rylan straightened, his instincts on alert. He had faced pirates, aliens, and mercenaries, but he had never been summoned by royalty for anything more than thanks or commendation. The corridors of the palace were magnificent, with high ceilings, golden trim, and banners representing the human-alien alliance. The smell of fresh flowers drifted in from the gardens outside. Guards bowed as he passed, a silent reminder that this was a place of power, not just bricks and metal. Finally, he reached the Queen's chamber. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Queen Ariana seated on an elevated dais. Her robes shimmered with elegance, a mix of human and alien fabrics that represented the unity of her kingdom. She stood as he entered, her eyes sharp and measuring. "Captain Drake," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "Please come forward." Rylan bowed slightly, a habit from his military training. "Your Majesty," he said. "You requested my presence?" Queen Ariana gestured to a seat in front of her. "Yes, you have done a great service to the kingdom and to my family. Your actions saved my granddaughter's life. For that, you have my gratitude." Her gaze softened for a moment as she glanced toward a window where Lyra played under careful supervision. But gratitude is not the only reason I have summoned you. There is a matter of great importance, and it concerns the safety of this city and the future of our people. Rylan listened carefully, his instincts sharpening. He had seen enough battles to know that words like importance and future rarely ended in simple discussions. You are aware that the Zarathi are not merely thieves or mercenaries, the Queen continued. They are organized, ruthless, and strategic. Their attack on Lyra was deliberate. They seek to destabilize our city and undermine the human-alien alliance. Their interest in Lyra is symbolic. They believe that if they harm someone so closely tied to the throne, it will send a message of fear. Rylan nodded slowly. I understand, Your Majesty. I've seen their tactics before. They calculate, plan, and strike without mercy, but they also underestimate humans. Queen Ariana's lips curved slightly, a hint of approval in her expression. Indeed, and that is why I have summoned you. I am requesting, or perhaps demanding, that you remain in Luminaris Prime to act as Lyra's guardian, not only to protect her physically, but to train her in awareness, quick thinking, and survival strategies. This city will need leaders like her in the years to come, and she must be prepared. Rylan's jaw tightened. He had always been a free spirit, moving through the stars as he pleased, taking on missions that suited his skills and his conscience. The idea of being bound to one city and to one family was foreign to him. Yet, as he looked at the Queen's determined expression, he knew this was not a request to be ignored lightly. Your Majesty, he said carefully, I am honored by your trust, but I am a pilot, a soldier for hire. I don't usually stay in one place. I fly where duty calls. Queen Ariana's eyes hardened, showing a rare flicker of intensity. Captain Drake, I am not asking you to consider this lightly. The threat is real, and your presence here is necessary. Lyra's life and the stability of Luminaris Prime depends on it. If you refuse, I fear the consequences for all of us could be severe. Rylan took a deep breath, weighing his options. He could leave, continue his life of freedom, and rely on the city's defenses. But something in his gut told him that wouldn't be enough. Lyra had looked at him with trust and hope. That small, trembling hand had reached for him in the shuttle, and in that moment he realized that his purpose was no longer just about survival or glory. It was about protection. I will stay, he said finally, his voice steady, for Lyra and for the city. Queen Ariana inclined her head. Very well. Your decision is wise, Captain. You will have full support from the palace guards, the city's defense forces, and my own advisors. I trust you will train her, guide her, and keep her safe from any threat, known or unknown. Rylan nodded, accepting the weight of responsibility. I will not fail. The Queen's expression softened once more. I know you will not. That is why I chose you. She gestured to a nearby holographic table that projected a map of the city and its surrounding sectors. You will begin by familiarizing yourself with the palace grounds, the royal sector, and Lyra's daily routines. Observation is key. Anticipate risks before they appear. Humans have a unique ability to think creatively in moments of danger. Use it to your advantage. Rylan studied the map carefully. Patrol routes, transport lines, and strategic points were all displayed in holographic detail. Already his mind raced, calculating potential scenarios and contingencies. He had spent years navigating the unpredictable nature of the universe. But this mission was unlike any other. Here, failure was not just personal. It would affect a child, a family, and a city. Over the next few days, Rylan settled into his new role. He observed Lyra, noting her curiosity, intelligence, and resilience. The girl was small but quick, her eyes sharp and full of questions. She asked endless inquiries about his ship, the stars, and his adventures, and Rylan answered as best he could, careful not to frighten her while teaching lessons she would need to survive if danger returned. He introduced her to basic self-defense techniques, drills that tested her reflexes and awareness, and exercises that strengthened her mental focus. At first, Lyra resisted, frustrated that playtime had been replaced with training. But Rylan was patient. He understood that true skill came from practice, patience, and understanding, not force. Slowly, she began to grasp the lessons, showing a natural aptitude that impressed even him. One evening, as the twin moons of Luminaris Prime rose over the city, casting a silver glow over the palace, Rylan stood on the balcony watching Lyra play. The city was alive below, peaceful and unaware of the recent threat. Yet he knew the peace was fragile. The Zarathi were out there, plotting, planning, waiting for another opportunity to strike. "Do you think they'll come back?" Lyra asked, her voice small. She had learned to trust him, to seek guidance when fear arose. "They might," Rylan said honestly, "but we'll be ready. That's why we train and why we prepare. Fear doesn't have to control us. It can make us stronger if we use it wisely." Lyra nodded, looking up at him with a mixture of admiration and determination. "I want to be strong like you." Rylan smiled faintly, feeling a rare warmth in his chest. "You already are strong, Lyra. Strength isn't just about fighting, it's about courage, thinking clearly, and protecting those you care about. Remember that." The Queen's warning echoed in his mind. The threat was real, and the Zarathi would not wait forever. But for the first time in years, Rylan felt a sense of purpose that went beyond missions and contracts. He was here for something greater, to protect a life, to train the next generation, and to show that humans could rise to challenges in ways no enemy could predict. As the night deepened, Rylan reflected on his decision to stay. It was no longer about duty alone, it was about trust, responsibility, and the quiet bond forming between himself and Lyra. He had faced countless dangers in the vastness of space, but this mission here in the heart of Luminaris Prime was proving to be the most important yet. And somewhere in the shadows the Zarathi watched. They had underestimated humans once, and they would soon learn that courage, ingenuity, and heart could be far more dangerous than any weapon. Rylan Drake was no longer just a pilot. He was a protector, a teacher, and a human capable of extraordinary resolve. And for the first time, he knew that staying put, facing a challenge head-on in the city and in the life of a child, could be the most powerful action of all. The stage was set. The city slept peacefully, but danger lingered at the edges of the stars. And in the heart of the palace, a human and a child prepared quietly for what was coming next. The days following Rylan Drake's decision to stay in Luminaris Prime passed with a quiet tension in the air. On the surface, the city carried on as usual. Markets buzzed with traders from distant planets. Children laughed in hoverboard races through the palace gardens, and lights sparkled along the high towers as evening fell. But Rylan knew the Zarathi were still out there, waiting, watching, and planning. He spent hours each day training Lyra, guiding her through exercises that tested not just strength but thinking, observation, and quick decision-making. She was small, but her mind was sharp. She noticed details others might miss, a shadow moving differently than expected, the faint hum of energy in the air, or the way people reacted when danger approached. "Remember, Lyra," Rylan said one afternoon as they crouched behind a wall in the palace training grounds. "Strength is not just about fighting. It's about noticing what others don't, predicting what might happen, and acting before it's too late." Lyra nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Like a cat hunting in the dark?" "Exactly," Rylan said, smiling. "Humans and you have an edge because we can adapt. We can think creatively when others follow patterns. It was that creativity that made humans unpredictable, and Rylan intended to use it to protect the city and Lyra. But despite their training, the Zarathi returned sooner than expected. A small fleet of stealth ships appeared in the outer atmosphere, their engines quiet but deadly. They had learned from their first attack and were moving cautiously, hoping to strike with surprise and avoid the city's defenses. Rylan spotted them on the palace radar before anyone else did. "Zarathi fleet incoming," he called to the guards in the control room. "Prepare the defenses." The city's elite defense force activated energy shields, deployable drones, and automated turrets along the perimeter of the royal sector. The Zarathi fleet split into multiple groups, attempting to draw defenders away from the palace. But Rylan had already anticipated such a strategy. "Divide their attention," he instructed, pointing to holographic projections. "Lead some of their ships into the outer sectors. We'll trap them using their own momentum against them. Lyra, watch closely. Notice how we use what we know to stay ahead of them." Lyra's eyes widened as she watched Rylan coordinate the city's forces. He was calm but intense, moving quickly between commands, simulations, and calculations. The human mind, he demonstrated, could outthink even the most advanced alien technology. The first wave of Zarathi ships was lured into a narrow canyon outside the city, where drones and defensive barriers forced them into a bottleneck. Rylan maneuvered his small reconnaissance ship through the space between the city and the fleet, drawing fire while avoiding damage. His movements were precise, unpredictable, and bold. One wrong calculation could have meant disaster, but Rylan trusted his instincts. Lyra's heart raced as she watched him dodge energy blasts, flip his ship, and use the enemy's own trajectory against them. "He's amazing," she whispered to herself. Even with their technology, the Zarathi struggled to keep up. Their attacks were aggressive, but human unpredictability and clever tactics made them hesitate. They had expected fear and confusion. What they faced instead was calm, calculated resistance and a determination they could not understand. Back in the palace, Rylan coordinated the palace drones to intercept another group of attackers attempting to breach the inner defenses. Using synchronized patterns, the drones created a moving shield around the royal sector, forcing the enemy to waste energy on attacks that never reached their target. Each step was methodical, designed to protect the city and minimize risk to its inhabitants. "See, Lyra?" Rylan said, pointing at the display. "We use their strength against them. They think they are strong and clever, but they don't expect humans to act in ways they cannot predict." Lyra nodded, absorbing every detail. "So it's not just fighting," she said. "It's thinking and acting first." Rylan smiled. "Exactly. Humans fight with more than weapons. We fight with intelligence, courage, and creativity. That is our edge." As the Zarathi ships began to falter under the coordinated defenses, Rylan's small ship darted between them, disabling critical systems with precision strikes. The aliens' frustration became clear. They were used to overwhelming force and intimidation, but humans had a different strategy: patience, observation, and adaptability. Finally, after hours of maneuvering, the Zarathi were forced to retreat. Their ships fled into the darkness of space, battered and defeated, leaving Luminaris Prime unscathed. The city's citizens, unaware of the near catastrophe, continued their day, but inside the palace, relief was palpable. Queen Ariana approached Rylan in the control room, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "You have done what I feared even the best of us could not," she said. "The Zarathi are clever, but they have underestimated humans once again." Rylan shook his head slightly. It was a team effort. The palace defenses, the city drones, even Lyra's observations helped. Humans can adapt, yes, but we also work together. That is what made the difference today. The Queen nodded. "I see now why you are here. Not only to protect Lyra, but to teach. She must understand how to think, act, and survive. That is the true legacy of humanity in the galaxy. Courage, creativity, and the ability to rise when faced with impossible odds." Lyra, who had been quietly observing from a corner, stepped forward. "I want to help too," she said, her voice small but determined. "I don't want to be scared anymore." Rylan looked down at her and saw the spark of determination in her eyes. "You will help," he said, "but helping doesn't mean rushing in without thinking. We must plan, observe, and act when the moment is right. That is how humans win battles that others think are impossible." Over the next days, Rylan focused on preparing the city and Lyra for potential future attacks. He trained guards, coordinated patrols, and strengthened defensive systems. But he also spent time with Lyra, teaching her the principles of strategy, awareness, and self-reliance. She learned to recognize danger before it appeared, to trust her instincts, and to make quick decisions. One evening, as they reviewed the city's defenses, Lyra asked, "Do you think they'll come back?" "They will," Rylan admitted. "But we will be ready. Fear is a signal, not a prison. It tells us to prepare, to think, and to act. And humans, we use fear to become stronger." Lyra nodded. "I understand now. We won't be afraid." Rylan smiled faintly. "Good. That is the first lesson in being human. Courage, even when the odds seem impossible." The Queen summoned Rylan again the next day. She had observed the city's defenses and the training he had conducted with Lyra. "Your efforts are exceptional," she said. "The Zarathi will not strike blindly again, but we must anticipate their next move. They are cunning and their ambition is dangerous. That is why you are here, Captain. To think ahead, to protect, and to show that humanity will not be broken by fear." Rylan bowed slightly. "I will continue to prepare, Your Majesty. Humans may be outnumbered or outgunned at times, but we never give up. That is what makes us strong." The Queen studied him, then nodded. "I believe you, Captain. And I believe in humans. You are a reminder of what we can do when we are courageous and united." That night, as Luminaris Prime settled into quiet, Rylan looked out over the city. The lights sparkled like stars, beautiful and fragile, yet defended by human ingenuity and determination. He knew the Zarathi would return, but he also knew that humans had something they could not predict: courage, creativity, and the will to protect what mattered most. Lyra slept in her chamber, dreaming peacefully for the first time since the attack. Rylan stood watch over the city, vigilant, aware, and ready. Humanity had faced impossible threats before, and they would do so again. And in this city, under his watch, they would face them with courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination. For the Zarathi, Luminaris Prime had become a city that could not be easily conquered. And for Rylan Drake, protecting it and training the next generation to survive and thrive was no longer just a duty. It was a mission that defined what it meant to be human. The morning sun cast a soft golden light across the palace of Luminaris Prime. Its towers glimmered and the city below buzzed with life. But inside the palace, tension hung in the air. Captain Rylan Drake stood in the Queen's council chamber, facing Queen Ariana, her advisors, and a holographic display that projected a complex simulation of the royal sector. Today he was not just a hero, he was being tested. Queen Ariana's eyes met his with calm authority. "Captain Drake," she began, "your courage and skill have proven invaluable, but courage alone is not enough. Protecting Lyra, protecting the city, requires more than bravery. It requires foresight, strategy, and the ability to anticipate threats. Today we test your abilities." Rylan's jaw tightened slightly. He had anticipated challenges before, but a test designed to measure every decision, every instinct, was different. He nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty. I am ready." The Queen gestured to the holographic table. Instantly, the simulation filled the room with a three-dimensional map of Luminaris Prime. Drones, patrols, civilian traffic, and even energy shields were represented in real time. Then figures representing Zarathi ships appeared, moving silently but deliberately. "This simulation replicates the potential next attack by the Zarathi," the Queen explained. "Your goal is to protect Lyra, the palace, and the citizens while minimizing risk to your forces. Every choice you make will have consequences. We are watching not only your tactics but your judgment, your leadership, and your ability to inspire those under your command." Rylan studied the simulation carefully. It was complex, unpredictable, and full of potential traps, exactly the kind of challenge humans were best at facing. His mind began calculating scenarios, anticipating movements, and analyzing weaknesses. Lyra watched from the side, wide-eyed but calm. "I'm going to watch you, Rylan," she said. "I want to learn everything." He smiled briefly. "Good. Observing is just as important as acting. Remember that, Lyra. One day you will make decisions like this too." The simulation began. Zarathi ships appeared in multiple sectors simultaneously, testing every defense and probing for weaknesses. Rylan directed drones to intercept minor threats while he focused on the most critical targets. His strategy was simple yet effective: force the enemy into predictable patterns, then disrupt those patterns in unexpected ways. "Notice how they adjust their movements based on what we do?" Rylan said, pointing to the holographic projection. "They expect humans to act in certain ways. We'll do the opposite." He rerouted patrol drones to create false vulnerabilities, drawing the Zarathi into traps. Energy shields were adjusted dynamically, opening and closing to confuse the enemy. Civilian traffic routes were altered to minimize risk. Each decision required careful thought, balancing protection with efficiency. Lyra leaned closer. "It's like a game," she whispered. "Yes," Rylan said quietly. "But one mistake could cost lives. That's why thinking ahead is always better than reacting." Hours passed as the simulation became increasingly complex. Zarathi ships coordinated attacks, tried to split defenses, and even simulated sabotage attempts inside the palace. Rylan anticipated each move, adapting his strategy continuously. He didn't just react. He created opportunities to outsmart the enemy, demonstrating the human advantage, flexibility and creativity in the face of rigid, predictable tactics. At one point, a simulation indicated a potential breach near the palace gardens. Lyra gasped as she watched the holographic representation of her play area under attack. "Stay calm," Rylan said. "Panic doesn't help. Analyze, predict, and act. Look at the pattern." He directed a small team of drone interceptors to create a protective barrier, funneling the simulated enemies into a controlled area. Then he used timing and precise attacks to neutralize the threat while keeping the palace and Lyra safe. Queen Ariana watched silently, her eyes attentive but unreadable. The advisors murmured among themselves, impressed by Ryland's strategy. This was no ordinary human instinct at work. It was a combination of experience, intelligence, and adaptability. When the simulation reached its final stage, the Zarathi attempted a surprise strike on the palace's inner chamber. Ryland moved quickly, sending decoy drones to divert the attackers and personally guiding the main defense force into position. The simulated breach was blocked, the threat neutralized, and the city secured. Ryland leaned back slightly, breathing steadily. "Simulation complete," he said. "All key assets protected. Enemy neutralized." For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Queen Ariana spoke, her tone calm but full of weight. "Captain Drake, you have demonstrated not only skill and courage, but insight, leadership, and creativity. You have proven that humans can face impossible odds and adapt in ways that even advanced alien tactics cannot predict." Lyra's eyes shone with admiration. "Ryland, that was amazing. You saved the city in the simulation, just like you did in real life." Ryland smiled faintly. "It's not about me. It's about thinking, adapting, and protecting what matters most. Humans have that advantage. That's why we survived," the Queen nodded. "Indeed, today's test confirms what I already suspected. Humans are resilient, resourceful, and capable of extraordinary strategy under pressure. Your presence here is not just helpful, it is essential. Luminaris Prime and Lyra herself rely on human ingenuity as much as strength." Ryland's expression grew serious. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will continue to train, prepare, and lead. Humans never stop learning, and we never stop protecting what matters." The Queen gestured to Lyra. "And that is why she must also learn from you. One day she will need to make decisions like these herself. You are teaching her not only how to survive, but how to think, how to lead, and how to be human." Over the next days, Ryland and Lyra continued their training, now with a greater sense of purpose. She learned advanced observation techniques, strategic thinking, and the principles of anticipation and timing. Ryland emphasized the value of intelligence, patience, and adaptability. One afternoon, Lyra asked a question that surprised him. "Ryland, do you think humans are stronger than the Zarathi?" Ryland considered carefully. "Stronger? Not in the same way. The Zarathi have technology, numbers, and weapons. But humans have something they often don't: creativity, courage, and the ability to adapt. We can survive and succeed even when we are outnumbered or outgunned. That is our true strength." Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. "So it's not just about fighting, it's about thinking and being brave." "Exactly," Ryland said. "Humans don't just face danger. We outthink it, outmaneuver it, and use it to grow stronger." The Queen observed their progress, noting how the bond between Ryland and Lyra strengthened with each passing day. Training was not only about survival, it was about nurturing courage, intelligence, and leadership, the very qualities that made humans extraordinary in a galaxy full of danger. As night fell over Luminaris Prime, Ryland looked out across the city from the palace balcony. The lights glimmered like stars, beautiful and fragile, but now protected by human ingenuity and careful planning. The Zarathi threat was far from gone, but today, the city had been defended not just by weapons, but by thinking, courage, and preparation. Lyra slept soundly in her chamber, dreaming of strategies, training, and victories yet to come. Ryland watched over her, reflecting on the test and the lessons it had taught. Humans could face danger, yes, but humans could also adapt, learn, and inspire the next generation to do the same. Queen Ariana approached quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Captain Drake," she said softly, "today you have proven that humanity is not just brave, it is wise, strategic, and capable of leading even when the odds are impossible. You are more than a protector. You are a teacher, a leader, and a symbol of what humans can accomplish." Ryland bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will continue to do everything I can to protect Lyra, the city, and humanity's place in the galaxy." The Queen nodded, a rare smile appearing on her face. "And that, Captain, is why you remain indispensable. Remember this: strength alone cannot win battles. Courage, intelligence, and the ability to think beyond what is expected, that is what makes humans extraordinary." Rylan felt a quiet pride, tempered by the weight of responsibility. The test had been more than a simulation. It had been a reminder of what it truly meant to be human. Courage and skill were important, but foresight, adaptability, and the desire to protect others were what separated humanity from every other species he had encountered. As the night deepened over Luminaris Prime, Rylan Drake stood ready. The Zarathi would strike again, but now he and Lyra were not just ready, they were prepared, trained, and united. And in a galaxy full of uncertainty, the human spirit would continue to shine. The skies over Luminaris Prime darkened with unusual intensity. The city, usually alive with soft golden light reflecting off towering spires, now felt tense, almost holding its breath. Captain Rylan Drake stood on the observation deck of the palace, scanning the horizon. His instincts were sharp, honed from countless missions across the galaxy. But today was different. Today, the Zarathi were coming for more than just a challenge. They were coming for domination. Reports had come in hours earlier, multiple stealth fleets converging, faster and more aggressive than before. Sensors detected unusual energy signatures, suggesting advanced weapons and tactics. Luminaris Prime would not survive this attack without precise planning, quick thinking, and courage. Rylan turned to Lyra, who was watching from the balcony with wide, alert eyes. "Today you'll see everything we've trained for put into action," he said calmly. "Stay close, follow instructions, and remember what we practiced." Lyra nodded, her small hands gripping the railing. She had grown stronger, smarter, and more observant over the weeks. The fear that had once gripped her during the first Zarathi attack had transformed into determination and courage. "I'm ready," she said, Rylan's voice softened. "Good. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting even when you're afraid." The first wave of Zarathi ships arrived, their engines silent at first, then roaring as they plunged into the city's atmosphere. Drones and turrets activated instantly, engaging the enemy while warning sirens echoed through the streets. Citizens evacuated calmly under automated guidance, but the Zarathi were relentless, striking in multiple sectors simultaneously. Rylan's mind moved faster than the ships around him. He coordinated the palace defenses with precise instructions. "Drones to Sector 7. Divert enemy ships into the canyon corridor. Turrets on the north wall. Adjust angle to intercept incoming energy blasts. Shield reinforcement at all palace gates." His orders were rapid, exact, and executed without hesitation. Lyra watched, absorbing every command. She noticed details Rylan didn't explicitly point out. Shadows moving differently, energy fluctuations in the Zarathi ships, and the timing of attacks. "They're following patterns," she whispered. "But we can trick them." Rylan nodded without turning. "Exactly. Humans always find a way." As the Zarathi pressed forward, their attacks became coordinated, attempting to divide the defenders. Rylan anticipated this. He split the drones into decoy formations, creating the illusion of a weakened defense in one sector, while the main force protected critical areas. The Zarathi, expecting fear or predictable reactions, fell into the trap. Rylan piloted his small reconnaissance ship through the chaos, moving between energy blasts and enemy fighters. His maneuvers were daring but calculated, designed not to destroy the enemy outright but to force them into mistakes. A single misstep by the Zarathi could be exploited, and Rylan was ready. Lyra's heart raced as she watched him. "He's amazing," she whispered almost to herself. "I want to be like him." The second wave of attackers targeted the palace gates directly, their energy cannons glowing bright and dangerous. Rylan directed shields and drones to intercept, using careful timing to deflect blasts while minimizing strain on the energy grids. His human ingenuity turned what could have been devastation into controlled chaos, channeling the enemy's strength against themselves. At one critical moment, a group of Zarathi ships attempted a stealth maneuver to bypass the defenses entirely. Rylan anticipated it before the sensors even fully confirmed it. "Lyra, watch!" he shouted. "Notice the shadows, predict their path." Lyra pointed to the faint flicker near the palace wall. "There, they're trying to sneak in." "Exactly," Rylan replied. "We act first, think first, and we survive." He sent a swarm of drones to intercept the stealth ships, blocking them from reaching the palace inner grounds. The Zarathi, confused and frustrated, began making mistakes, their attacks less coordinated and less effective. The battle raged for hours, Energy blasts lit the sky. Drones collided with enemy ships, and the city's defenses held firm under Ryland's guidance. Yet even in victory, Ryland remained alert. Every move, every attack, and every pattern was analyzed in real time. Humans could adapt, and Ryland was determined to prove it. Then came the final threat. A massive Zarathi battleship armed with weapons capable of devastating entire city blocks. Its arrival caused the palace alarms to blare continuously. Ryland's eyes narrowed. This was the test of everything he had prepared for. Drones and turrets cannot stop it alone, he said, voice calm but firm. We need to outthink it, not overpower it. He calculated the ship's trajectory, predicting how it would attempt to breach the palace's inner walls. Using a combination of decoy drones, electromagnetic pulses, and precise timing, he forced the battleship into a narrow sector of the city's energy shield. It became trapped, unable to move freely without risking collision with other alien ships. Lyra gasped. "You're
trapping it!"
Ryland nodded. Humans don't always fight with brute force. We use strategy, timing, and creativity. Watch carefully. With flawless precision, Ryland activated a final sequence of drone attacks that exploited the battleship's blind spots. The enemy was forced to retreat, overwhelmed not by sheer power, but by strategy, adaptability, and human ingenuity. The city erupted in cheers, though Ryland did not allow himself a moment of celebration. He guided remaining drones and defense systems to ensure no stragglers could cause damage. His attention to detail kept the palace, Lyra, and the citizens safe. When the last Zarathi ship retreated into the darkness of space, the palace gates opened fully. Queen Ariana approached Ryland, her expression a mix of pride and relief. "Captain Drake," she said softly, "today you have done more than protect a child or a city. You have shown what humans can do when courage, intelligence, and determination combine. You have proven that no enemy, no matter how advanced, can underestimate humanity." Ryland nodded, exhaustion and relief mixing in his chest. "It wasn't just me, Your Majesty. The city's forces, the drones, Lyra's observations, they all contributed. Humans work together, think creatively, and never give up. That is what makes us strong." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes shining. "We did it," she said. "We won." Ryland knelt to her level. "We did, Lyra. And remember, courage, thinking ahead, and protecting others is what makes humans truly extraordinary. Today was just one battle, but the lessons you've learned will last a lifetime." The Queen looked at both of them. "Captain Drake, I formally offer you the position of head of royal defense. Your strategies, courage, and ability to inspire others are invaluable. You have found a place here, not just as a hero, but as a protector, teacher, and leader." Ryland's eyes widened slightly. He had always flown free across the stars, answering only to duty and conscience. Yet now, as he looked at the city, Lyra, and the Queen, he realized that home wasn't just a place, it was a purpose. I accept," he said finally. "Not for glory, but because protecting this city, this family, and humanity's future matters. That is my mission." The Queen smiled, her gaze proud. "Then, Captain Drake, humanity's courage and ingenuity will continue to shine here in Luminaris Prime." That evening, as the city settled into calm once more, Ryland stood on the palace balcony, looking out over the sparkling lights. Citizens celebrated quietly, unaware of how close danger had come or how a human mind had saved them all. Lyra joined him, her small hand in his, a symbol of trust, courage, and the human spirit. "Do you think we'll face them again?" she asked softly. "Maybe," Ryland said. "But humans are never defeated. We adapt, we fight, and we protect. And we rise stronger every time." Lyra smiled. "Then I want to be strong like you." "You already are, Lyra," Ryland said. "Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about courage, thinking, and protecting what matters most. That is what makes humans extraordinary." As the night deepened, the city sparkled like a field of stars. Ryland Drake had proven that courage, ingenuity, and determination could overcome even the most dangerous threats. The Zarathi had underestimated humans once more, and this time they would never forget it. Luminaris Prime was safe, for now. But more importantly, the human spirit had triumphed, and in that triumph, Ryland Drake had found not only purpose but a home, a mission, and a legacy to protect for generations to come. The city slept peacefully, Lyra dreaming of the stars and of the courage she would one day carry herself. And above it all, Captain Ryland Drake stood watch, a human hero in a galaxy that would always test him but never break him.